5% rise in inflation has left many households struggling to afford basics like food and energy.
With the cost of gas and electricity expected to rise again in the spring, it's being reported the government are looking at giving a cash boost to families that are hardest hit, less than 4 months after cutting universal credit by £20. Now, the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, joins us now. So this, we understand, is the Treasury briefing papers of a £500 one-off payment that will go to the hardest hit families. Were you aware of this briefing happening? Is it something that you would support and have been discussing?
So look, we talk to Treasury colleagues, ministers and officials all the time in business, as you'd expect. And there's a range of measures that have come up that we've discussed to deal with this issue, and you know, we're continuing to do that.
So were you? Sorry, I wasn't clear about the answer to the question there. Did you talk to them about it? Were you aware they were going to be briefing on it?
Yeah, there are lots of measures that we talk about. I mean, lots and lots of things have been discussed, and I'm sure you know that's one of the things that we've been talking about. My officials in the department speak to Treasury officials, and ministers speak to each other all the time.
But
is this something you'd welcome?
Something you've put forward and be keen to back. Then you're not behind this.
Look, I think we've got to wait and see what the actual announcement is. We've got a spring statement in March, and typically it's not really common to see ministers talk about, speculate about measures which the Treasury are responsible for. It's their responsibility, and the Chancellor will come out with his measures at the appropriate time. But
so the spring statement, though, Kwasi Kwarteng, the spring statement's coming in March. People need to know now. People are desperate now. They need some help. They don't want to have to wait till March.
No, so the reason why I'm saying this timeline is that the announcement, Ofgem are going to make an announcement about the energy price cap, the retail price cap, in February. But of course, that will kick in on the 1st of April. So I'm sure before the actual impact is made, we can come up with an announcement.
This £500 payment that is being muted, although we don't know the detail of it, is that something that you would welcome as the Business Secretary?
Welcome any measures that deal with that actually deal with this problem, that make it easier for people, particularly vulnerable people, people on lower incomes, to get through what is a global issue. It's a global situation that we're facing in terms of rising prices, inflation, rising energy costs.
Of course,
and I'm absolutely sorry.
Let's bring you something that we heard on the show this morning to really sort of focus the attention on how brutal it is on a daily basis for people. Jack Monroe, as you know, is one of those that campaigns a lot on food shortages and is very aware of issues. And she spoke and she told about somebody that's so desperate they did this.
I had a message last night from a gentleman who'd read my thread, who said that he was going to bed having eaten a teaspoon of toothpaste in order to fool himself into thinking that he'd had a meal. This is the reality for people in Britain today, and I would urge Kwasi Kwarteng to just listen to people who are speaking up about their difficult experiences.
Are you listening?
Yeah, I'm absolutely appalled that that should be the case, and that's why we're trying to work out the best way to deal with what is a really, really serious problem. I mean, I don't know who this gentleman was, but that's an appalling story. I'm very, very, appalled that that should happen, and that's why people like me in government are trying really hard to make sure that we can help people.
Here's some ideas that other governments have done, particularly related to energy. So in France, the government is going to force EDF, the state energy giant, to take an £8.4 billion euro financial hit. That's about £7 billion to protect households from the cost. Spain, there's a windfall tax on electricity generators and gas producers. Germany has slashed their surcharge on bills that they were using to support renewable energy and instead put the money into other places like those that are harder hit. Have you looked at those ideas? And why are you looking for better? Do you have better? People need to know, don't they?
So look, we look at what people are doing across Europe all the time, but the important fact that you should mention, or should be mentioned, is the fact that none of those countries you have mentioned have a price cap. They don't have an energy retail price cap, which has protected consumers from the worst effects of the increase in wholesale prices. None of the countries have a price cap,
and so they have. Going up in April, we know, and going up again, it's been suggested in October.
Well, with respect, Kate, I've been very clear that the price cap stays. And over the last few months, the price cap has protected people in our country, the most vulnerable people in our country.
Stays at all or stays at the level it is? Because that's the difference. There might be a cap, but if it's 2.5... Sorry?
Is that it's a 6-month period, and the last price cap was set for October the 1st to April the 1st. And I was very adamant, under lots of pressure from some of the energy supplier companies, that price cap stayed the same.
Yeah, but we're talking about going forward, the fact that it's likely to go up in April and then up in October. That's the fear.
In fairness, you've mentioned other countries and what they're doing, and I think it's quite right for me as Energy Minister to say what we've done. And over the last few months, the price cap has helped people against very high increases in energy costs.
OK, we did have Richard Walker on, Managing Director of the supermarket Iceland, and he was talking about the fact that there is a cap for consumers. There isn't a cap for businesses, is there? And they are facing seriously increasing costs on energy within the world of business. It's your remit. What are you looking to try and help them?
So, Ben, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's good of you to say that the domestic consumer, the retail consumer, you and me and other people, are protected by the price cap. Businesses have a difficult environment. And again, we've got lots of measures. We've had lots of measures in the past. We've got an energy-intensive users payment for companies that use a lot of energy. We're looking at what's called the emissions trading scheme, how we can use that to try and soften the blow of higher energy costs. And again, we're talking all the time about measures that we can introduce.
Businesses
Some
that
of them
are
we have
suffering,
done.
it's us then, because the money's passed back to us and it increases the cost of living generally, doesn't it?
It's all inflationary, and it's a rising cost that are happening across the world. And I'm just saying some of the measures that we have put forward to try and help people. And I was very pleased that Ben pointed out that actually on the retail side, we have protected people with a price cap. On the business side, we don't have a price cap. And we're looking at other measures, as we have done in the past.
As much as what you know, Mr. Kwarteng, is as much as that cap has helped, that cap is going to soar. And I know this is a global issue, and you are having to deal with soaring energy prices that are beyond your control. But the cap, whether you believe it's staying in place, it's still going to soar to levels that people won't feel it's protecting them as much as they would like to. And that's the concern for everybody, isn't it, sitting at home today? We had Jack Monroe and we had Richard talking about the real cost of inflation. Inflation is, as from the government, is saying it's 5%. Jack's perspective on this, and she blogs about food poverty and the difficulties for people consuming food, is actually it's far higher than that, because the way inflation is calculated, it's calculated over a whole number of items that are put into a basket, 700 items, I think. But of those items, you're including legs of lamb, you're including champagne, you're including all sorts of things, and all sorts of things that majority of the country, a vast majority of the country, can't even consider trying to put into their shopping basket. One of the things that she was saying today, it's £1 for 500 grams of rice. This a year ago, it was 45p for a kilogram bag of rice. So the reality of inflation for people on the breadline is searingly painful, isn't it?
So that's why we're looking at the measures that I've described. You've read about this one-off payment. We're going to have to wait and see what the Chancellor comes up with. And we recognise that this is a serious problem.
Right.
OK, let's talk about some other things, because there's some headlines on the front of the Times. It's an issue that's been concerning your party for a number of weeks now, and that is the issue that Boris Johnson is having as a leader. But what we are seeing now is some of those Tory rebels are suggesting that they are being blackmailed by the whips within the party with regards to their position and what they're going to vote on. Have you heard anything about these allegations? Would you like to see allegations like that investigated by the police? Because something as serious as blackmail, and they claim that they have evidence, both recorded interviews and also text messages. Would you like to see something like that investigated by the police?
Look, I think it's a parliamentary issue. I was very surprised to hear those allegations. I've been an MP for 12 years. I've never heard anything like that. And what I would say is that the whips don't have control over the public purse. They don't have it in their power to decide what to spend money on. So I thought it was very unlikely that they would have made those threats, because those threats simply wouldn't have been believed. But they're serious allegations and they need to be looked into.
Well, apart from the fact that I think people know that whips have influence, over departments?
Kate, I think it's really, sorry to cut you off there, I think it's a really serious allegation to suggest that party managers, whips, have control over public finance. They don't have that sort of control. And their job is to persuade people to vote with the government, as they have done for decades. And they try and do that by a variety of means.
It is a
but
very
the idea that they'll say to an MP, well, if you don't vote with the government, then your school or your hospital won't get the requisite funds. I think that's appalling.
It is a serious allegation.
I don't also think that it happens to be, I find it very unlikely.
It's a serious allegation. You would imagine that they wouldn't make that allegation without having proof that it did actually happen. If anybody is... If anybody, well, I mean, they're going to get called out on it, so they're going to have to prove it, aren't they? That's the point. If anybody is found to have used some of these methods, though, should they be disciplined?
Look, so people make allegations all the time on all sorts of things. They don't, with varying degrees of evidence. So I can't make a judgment one way or the other on this. They're serious allegations. They need to be investigated. And I think, you know, there should be consequences if people have been found to behave in that way. I find it very unlikely myself, but we're going to have to look into this.
OK, Kwasi Kwarteng, we'll leave it there. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.